You might catch yourself sliding in and out of it. You might catch yourself sliding in and out of a hallucinatory state. Just relax and enjoy it. Just relax and enjoy it.
This is an experiment in mind formation. Information. Forming, controlling, operating your mind and your brain. We're using digital techniques to overload, scramble, confuse, unfocus your mind. The natural state of the brain is chaos. Chaos is beautiful.
Ann Swanson, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Justin?
I'm doing so well. Thank you so much for joining me today and being willing to have this conversation. So the way I like to get things started is just tell people a little bit about yourself, what it is that you do, and when what you've done and where you're at and where you're going.
Yeah, well, I also am a meditation teacher and a yoga therapist. I originally went to India and studied yoga and meditation and sound healing for myself because I was dealing with a lot of anxiety as well as persistent pain since I was a teenager. And through my own healing, I was like, wow, I really want to commit my life to this. And studying in India, my teacher, he, of course, taught us a lot of the philosophy, but he was very much into anatomy and physiology and the biology of how yoga and meditation affect us. And so after that point, I was like, I am going to go into the medical field and become something, a physical therapist, a doctor, so that I can be the best yoga teacher I can. And so I did that. I did all the pre-med course load. I originally studied art, so that was a whole new direction, and worked in a cadaver lab and became a massage therapist and just explored the human body and the human brain from many perspectives. That ultimately ended up with me getting a Master of Science graduate degree in yoga therapy and writing the book Science of Yoga. And since then, I have just recently put out the book called Meditation for the Real World, which also covers the science of meditation, because I teamed with a Harvard researcher, Dr. Sara Lazar, to integrate the most cutting edge science. But what I love about it is it includes practical, step-by-step, real world meditations for specific situations for getting through challenges in life.
Interesting. So what are some of the things that you've discovered about the science of meditation?
Well, not only does it affect your brain and your ability to focus, meditation is boot camp for your focus. It trains your brain to come back to the present moment. But it does affect all the systems of your body. In addition, it helps us have less sick days, get the common cold and the common flu less often, and recover quicker. It helps us to improve our cardiovascular health, which is a really big area, lowering the blood pressure and helping with heart rate variability, which is your heart's ability to adapt and respond to the cues in your environment, which is really great. Representing resilience. So it helps us with stress resilience. And of course, one of the biggest areas of research is mental health. Mental health is an area that meditation does really well, especially in combination with therapy and other traditional methods. Meditation is key for our mental health.
Yeah, I can't agree more. It's definitely been an integral part of my recovery from, past traumas and depression, addiction issues. I'm sure you've read a little bit about me and know that I'm a recovering addict. And you had mentioned that you had some issues in the past as well with alcohol, I believe.
Yeah, I came from a family that I have a family member, a close family member who is an alcoholic. And I didn't really consider myself an alcoholic because I didn't need it every day. I didn't have the same tendencies as that family member. It didn't show up in the same way. But over time, I realized I was turning to it as an escape when I had social anxiety,
Right.
and I was drinking too much where I would forget. And I had these times of like binge drinking, and I'm like, how did I get here? Once I started, I would continue on. And maybe this only happened once every few months, once every 6 months. But by the time I'm in my 30s, I was like, I can't cut it anymore. I don't want to do this anymore, not even if it's once a year. And right before I signed the book contract for Meditation for the Real World,
Mm.
I went out with my tango friends and we had some drinks and cocktails and we were having a good time. And this guy that is very challenging in the tango community, he was sitting at our table. I mean, he sexually harasses women constantly. He makes racist comments. It's just constant. And I found my only way to deal with sitting next to him was ordering cocktails. And I got through that night. But the next day, the day I was signing my contract for Meditation for the Real World, I had a hangover and I was like, I can't do this anymore. Even if this is only once a year thing, that was not a situation. I do not want to feel such frustration, and the negativity I felt toward that guy was just amplified with the alcohol.
Right.
And I didn't want to feel that anymore. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to stop for a month while I'm getting into writing this book. You know, it's not that big of a deal to have a glass of wine here or there. You know, I'll just stop for a month. That was a commitment I was willing to make and see how I feel. First few weeks, it was kind of hard. I was like, oh, I just want to have a half a glass of wine with dinner. And then by the month point, my sleep had transformed. And I was able to now be put in these situations, these social situations where I had to use my tools in meditation. I didn't use alcohol.
Right.
And I started to do meditations for social anxiety. And when I was around that guy that's so frustrating, I would send him love and compassion. I would say, may he be safe. May he be healthy. May he be free from suffering.
Yeah.
And I was able to interact around him a lot better using these techniques rather than having a cocktail like, oh no, not this guy again.
Right.
And so 1 month turned into what has it been 14 months now of not drinking. I mean, I've had like a cheers, like a sip or something like that, but not I don't feel like I need to have a drink to join in. And it's been a transformative journey. And from looking at the research, apparently it takes about a month to get those impacts to your brain, to your sleep, to change your neurochemistry. So that's probably why around then I was like, oh. But I think the key was not committing. I'm quitting forever, which we've all said before. But then
Right.
we go back into it. It was I'm quitting for 1 month. That's it. 1 month. And that was what I needed.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, it's quite a change, isn't it? Just experiencing the world without using substances to dull our experience or to get through moments like that. You know, it really does force us to rely on the tools that we have cultivated and have some actual coping skills. I
And
feel like
use
that
the
was my
coping
biggest
skills.
problem. Yeah, I feel like that was my
Yeah.
biggest problem for the longest time is no coping skills. So you had mentioned that would use a meditation with this gentleman. So
Yeah.
it seems like you were using some very old meditation techniques, some old Buddhist meditation techniques. What kind of when you did start learning about meditation, what type of meditation was it that you initially began learning? Was it mindfulness of breathing techniques, or was it anything more complicated?
Yeah. So I think a lot of us come to meditation because of what we did in our yoga class.
Mm.
Because, you know, we come for the physical and then the yoga class has a meditation at the end. So I think that was my first introduction, but then I feel like the most common types that are used by yoga teachers and just for beginners is, like you said, breath awareness and body awareness.
Mm.
And I really grabbed onto like those two, and especially body awareness since I'm a person who likes to dance and move. But I've had some experiences where that particular style of meditation that is so popular has actually done me wrong, where it wasn't the right technique for that
Mhm.
situation. If you'd like me to
Yeah,
share.
if you'd care to go into that, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I have this problem. I have extreme anxiety, or I, used to have this level of anxiety where I'd go to the doctor's office and they were going to do a procedure on me. And if I felt uncomfortable in any way, rather than a fight or a flight, it's like freeze, pass out, disassociate. I'm on the floor. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I am. It's a very out of body experience with adrenaline, and I can't sleep for days. So obviously, I wanted to fix this. I go to a yoga teacher, I'm like, what can I do? And I'm like, all right, this is how you do it. Notice your body, notice your breath, all of that. So I go in there, I'm prepared. I'm like, I'm going to do a meditation during this moment. So I notice my body and I think, oh, this is going to work. But boom, 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 boom. Heart really loud, really fast,
Mm.
taste metal in my mouth. And then I notice my breath, it's really strained. And boom, I'm out quicker than I've ever been out before. And I look into the research. Apparently, when you do body awareness or breath awareness and you're experiencing acute anxiety, when people are at that very high level of anxiety, it makes the anxiety worse.
Mm.
That's what the research tells us. And if you've ever experienced where a meditation made it feel worse, you're just doing the wrong technique for the wrong moment.
Right.
It's not that meditation makes it worse. Of course, over time, being able to notice your breath and body is going to be helpful for anxiety. But in that moment, I needed another tactic. I needed another technique. And so I found that depending on the situation, if I'm in that acute anxiety, I'm about to pass out, or for anybody that like gets overwhelmed when they're going to give us talk or something like that, I do one of two methods. I either will ground down if I have to pay attention and answer questions, feel my feet on the ground, feel my body on the seat that I'm sitting on. And with each exhale, feel, you can do this while you're listening, feel those points of contact and releasing down into them. This allows me to answer questions and be present, but not be overwhelmed with those internal body sensations. I'm more on the outside connecting to the earth. And then the other method, if I am like getting a dental procedure or something where I don't have to talk and answer things, I will then imagine I'm at a safe place. I'm at the beach. For me, I'm wiggling my toes in the sand. I literally wiggle my toes. My breath now becomes the sound of the ocean. And I just visualize and go to a new place. So it was really important for me for this book, Meditation for the Real World, to include meditations for specific situations. As you mentioned, when you're really stressed out about somebody that's in your social group that is inappropriate and makes you angry, you can send them loving kindness. It doesn't have to be this long 10-minute meditation. It can be a 1-minute meditation. It can be while they're talking to you. May they be safe. May they be healthy. And
Mm.
you'll feel a transformation with these mini meditations.
That's awesome. Yeah, Brahma Vihara practice, or Metta, Karuna, Mudita, Upekkha, the loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity practices have been just so helpful for me. I'm in the middle of a year of metta. So like one of my main
Mm.
practices that I'm doing is just metta practice. And that's not to say I'm not doing other practices as well, but I've definitely been putting more of a focus on metta for the past year, and it's definitely made an impact. So
One
you
thing
said,
I
go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say one thing I've found with meta is like I'll choose for the part of the meditation where you're visualizing somebody that you don't know that well. Like maybe this person that sold you coffee today,
Right.
that stranger, and you send them loving kindness. I find that the next day when I go to get coffee, or I did this to the security guard in my building, I didn't have any connection with them. All of a sudden, they're so nice and loving, and like it's weird. It's like that meditation, they got the vibes of it. I've seen transformations and made deep connections by sending somebody meta in my meditation.
That's awesome. So how long did you have the anxiety issues for? Was that like an ongoing thing throughout your life, or did it just arise later in life, or?
Yeah, it really has been ongoing. I think I was a very anxious baby and child. And when I look at my family, there was a lot of anxiety in the family, in the household. So it's contagious. You catch it. Nature and nurture. The nurture aspect, when you're around people that are anxious, you become more anxious. And so it's been an ongoing thing for me as a recovering perfectionist. Meditation has been really key to help me recover from that disease also.
Right. Yeah. And is there any specific practice that you use to target that?
Yes, actually, it's perfect because it's meta, but I do it in a different way.
Mhm.
So, usually with meta, we start by giving loving kindness to ourselves, right? That's the beginning of it. May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I be joyful. May I be free from suffering.
Mhm.
Whatever wishes you're giving. And that's often the hardest one for people,
Right.
especially people like me.
Yeah, it's actually in the lineage that I'm a part of, and the way that I was taught to do meta practice is to start with a benefactor. Start with somebody that's been kind to us,
Mm,
who it's easy to generate these feelings of loving kindness for.
yeah.
Even it can be a close friend, a teacher, a mentor, even a pet. I find pets are
Yes.
very helpful because it's really hard to, hold any kind of resentments against your pets. Generally, we love our pets very much, so if we bring the pet to mind, it's easy to generate those feelings of loving kindness, and then we move to the self after that because it makes it easier to generate
Mm.
these feelings of loving kindness for the self after doing the benefactor first. But as you were saying,
Yeah, the method I do is very similar. So you start with yourself as it's often done traditionally, then
mm,
you do all the other steps. So you'll do the benefactor, somebody that you want to send gratitude to and appreciation. You'll do this stranger, you'll do somebody who's easy to love, you'll do the challenging person. You'll go through all the other people that you're going through. And then at the end, you do yourself again. So same sort of concept, but now I've just practiced with all these people that are easy and hard to send loving kindness to. I send loving kindness to that tango guy. He's
right,
my challenging one. And then now it's much easier because I've practiced. So now when I do myself, I'm able to do it with more self-compassion, to connect with it more. And that technique is one that I outlined for perfectionism in the book Meditation for the Real World, because it really helps to put it at the end also.
so I've kind of been just doing some contemplating lately and just kind of reframing the way that I'm looking at depression and anxiety and anger and just all the shame and all of these things. And it's kind of come to my conclusion that it's all really relative to the illusion of the self, right? So,
Hmm.
we have this concept of anatta, or not self, and it's, that behind the five aggregates, there's essentially emptiness. In the Mahayana, they would call it sunyata, or, the voidness, whatever, however you would like to phrase it. But it's that illusion of separation of self and other. It's the illusion of the division between self and other that really creates a lot of the friction in life, I believe.
Hmm.
Like they say, no self, no problem, right? If there's nobody for it to be happening to, there's no one to suffer.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I think what meditation gives us is the ability to de-identify with the self being us, like the voice in our head. That's not us. When you're able to step back and observe, then you're able to see, like, oh, who's that speaking? That's not me. I'm observing it. And you can continue on that process. One of the things that meditation, when I look into the research, gives us is something that researchers call meta skills. You know, meta being that sense of
Right.
greater than just regular skills, but also meta skills, like very meta, like you learn how to think about thinking, and that's metacognition.
Right.
You learn how to be aware that you're aware. That's meta awareness. And you also learn how to be aware of your thinking patterns and processes. That's metacognitive awareness. So we build these meta skills and we become better at learning how to learn things. We
Right.
become better at living life. So practically speaking, being able to pull back and think about thinking, be aware of awareness, be the observer, also gives you what people in the education world call these meta skills, help you learn everything better.
Right. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And what I've found is that even if we because we talk about, observing the self, and we can observe, that the body is not self, that the thoughts are not self, and that the mind is not self. And, this is normally where people come to the conclusion of, oh, well, you're the observer or the witness or just awareness. But again, we can observe the observer and we can witness the witness and we can be aware of awareness. So behind that,
Hmm.
what is there? There's just experience, right? So when seeing, we're just seeing. There's no one to see. There's just seeing. And so once we disidentify with that idea of a fixed self, because even the observer, the witness, is just the ego trying to latch on to something, in my experience. It's still just the self trying to hold on to the idea of a self, which is a learned idea when we come right down to it. Like, you were taught what your name was, you were taught how to be who you are. Our parents teach us to be somebody. They were somebody, so they want you to be somebody too. And we it's important to be somebody because well, you have to exist in the world and you have to survive and you have to do all these things to exist in the world. But eventually you do get to a point where you're like, this isn't helping me anymore. This isn't serving me. This idea of a self, this constant mental chatter of, oh, I need to do this, I am this, I am this way. It really is ultimately like the worst thing that could possibly happen to us, is having that voice constantly berating us. The
I
inner
know. And
critic.
if we were listening to that voice as a person that was just like following us around all the time, we'd be like, you're crazy.
Right.
Shut up. You're annoying. You're so critical. You won't stop talking. We just want that silence. And people think that meditation is silencing that voice, stopping that voice completely. But it's instead, as we were just saying, like becoming aware of that awareness, thinking about that thinking, and like stepping back. So it starts to soften naturally when you do that. You're not like actively stopping it. Instead, you're just kind of stepping back, kind of it becomes a little fuzzier
Right.
and it more distant.
Do you feel like that you could reach a point where the voice stops?
I have moments. I mean, definitely I use this Muse headband that measures my brain waves while I meditate sometimes.
Right.
And it will say, this amount of time you were like focused. You were not thinking about other things. You were not in what we call the default mode network, which
Right.
is that mind wandering
Mhm.
state. You were able to come back. And so I definitely have like moments of it, and moments where I'm really, really present and able to see things clearly, as you said.
Right. So I had an interesting experience a few weeks ago, and I haven't really talked about it other than to like close friends. But I had just an interesting thing pop up in my meditation practice, but I guess what I would call a cessation. And since that time, it was like February 4th, I think. And since then, I have had, and this is going to sound kind of insane, but I've had no self-referential thought in the past 3 weeks,
Yeah.
like none.
Wow.
Like
That
so,
that default mode network is responsible for what researchers say, like the
yeah,
me thinking,
yeah, yeah.
me, self-referential thinking about yourself.
Mhm.
And what we're doing in meditation is we are going into something called the central executive network.
Mhm.
That's where you're able to be more compassionate, see things clearly, see things as a whole, see
Right,
as it is, and focus
right,
better, be in that intense focus, not distracted by that voice.
right. And it's been my experience over these past few weeks that when we're in that state, when you're using that executive functioning network, that the Brahma Viharas kind of arise naturally, right? When we're totally in when we're not working in conceptual reality, that they just arise on their own. Like, and there's really no need to cultivate them because they're already there. Like, that is the natural
Mm.
state, is what I'm
Hmm.
experiencing lately. So that's been
Ah,
fun.
a new perspective. One thing I was interested about you is you also are a musician.
Mhm.
Yeah. Do you integrate music into your meditation or
Not so much. Not so much.
sounds?
No,
Yeah.
I mean, music is a form of meditation for me, right? Like, I mean, just
Yes.
like anything else can be, because if we really get down to it, meditation and daily life aren't separate things. It is the intention, at least in my experience, to bring that awareness and just that view behind the layers of perception, so to speak, right? And that's really, I think, what we're talking about when we're really talking about finding the true self. Not that there is a self in any way,
Yeah.
but it's getting underneath those layers of conditionings and operating in that way in every aspect of life, really just bringing that presence to everything that we do, really being connected to the present moment and just
Yeah.
being that intimate, whether it's music or whether it's, I do carpentry as a trade,
Mm.
whether it's, doing that or whatever else that it is that I'm doing. I try to bring that, just that mindfulness and that awareness to whatever it is that I'm doing. And I think that
Yeah.
is the practice, right? Is really because, we can sit on the cushion all day, but if we're not bringing that into the world, it's not really serving us.
Yeah. If I'm not bringing compassion to that tango guy, then it's not really serving me
Exactly.
if I'm feeling that hatred in my heart. Yeah. And what you describe is what researchers in psychology call the flow state, to get into that zone, to be present. And meditating, our formal meditation practice, whether it be a 10, 20-minute practice or just like a 1 minute meditation as a reset through the day, that preps us to be able to get into flow state quicker and stay in it longer, which we all want to do, whether it's being a musician or just working, writing something, being like, oh, super creative and into it. So meditation helps us to do that. It's like practice, it's boot camp for that, for your focus and your ability to go into those states. But I've been experiencing and using music in my meditation practice, using sounds that are strategically engineered to optimize your brainwave patterns to get you into the right sort of state for
Something
meditation.
like binaural beats or something like that.
Yeah, I like binaural beats, which you use headphones so
Mhm.
that that allows your eyes to
Yeah,
kind of
it's
go
a
back and
hemisphere
forth.
syncing. Yeah. Have you done
Exactly.
anything with the gateway process? Have you played with that yet?
No.
It's pretty fascinating. If you're interested, I'll send you some information on it, and I've got all the gateway tapes. It's a thing that was put out by the Monroe Institute in the late '70s, and the
Mm.
CIA did studies on it, and yeah, it's pretty fascinating. Basically, they came to the conclusion that we're living in a holographic reality, and uh, and I'll tell you more about that later. We'll talk about that off
Well,
air.
it, in a way, it's, these sounds and this music that is engineered in this way is what researchers call digital drugs. Like, I'm serious, that's the name of the research paper. It says digital drugs. And then it will say, the hertz or the frequencies that were used. And so what you're doing is you're optimizing your brain waves to perhaps be in that alpha brainwave, that place of relaxation that meditation tends to bring us into. It can help you get there quicker if you listen to specific sounds. And also like theta brainwaves, we can listen to sounds that induce that theta brainwave state, which is creativity and kind of divergent thinking, and gets us in a different feel. Like children are in that theta state all the time. Or even some sounds can put you like to sleep. You can listen to it while you sleep. So I've been experimenting with that and creating audios of meditations that have that music on it to optimize the practice for people.
Very cool. Very cool. How long have you
Yeah.
been doing that for?
I just started in the past year working with a producer. She has 2 master's degrees in music. So she's like all about how can this affect us therapeutically? How can it heal us? And we put together an album of meditation music. It just came out yesterday,
Oh, nice.
actually.
Amazing.
Yes. It goes with my book, Meditation for the Real World. So you can check out the book and how to get the album and meditations with these sounds to optimize your practice at meditationfortherealworld.com. But yeah, we just put that out yesterday, and it includes a lot of things, including binaural beats that have evidence to support them for putting us into these states. And I think if we could do that while being guided through a meditation or while focusing with our meditation, then we can really get there quicker.
Very nice. So what does your practice look like these days? And first of all, let's start at the beginning. How did you start? Like, what was your meditation practice when you
Mhm.
started? How did it evolve, and where are you at now?
I mean, my meditation practice when I started was just doing it as a part of the asana, the yoga
Mhm.
practice at the end of class.
Right.
And I then got into, because of Shavasana, lying there and listening to a guided meditation, I got into Yoga Nidra. So, Yoga Nidra is one of my favorites to practice and teach as kind of like a reset in the afternoon. Especially if I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'll take a 20-minute yoga nidra, lie down and listen to that. Or at this point, I can guide myself through that. That's more sporadic. Now, what is my like dedicated practice
Mm.
is I have a 10 to 20-minute practice in the morning where I do, I think it's sitting next to me. I have a red light therapy and I do that for my chronic pain. So I sit in front of the red light therapy and I do my meditations. I will do audio meditations. Some days I will just guide myself through a meditation. I'll choose a focal point and do it in silence. So that's my every morning practice. And then the biggest thing for me that's made a difference is 1 minute meditations, mini meditations throughout the day. We all are told, be mindful all day, but that's easier said than done.
Right.
We need times to like reset, take a few breaths, reset right before you go on a call or right before you do an interview. Doing a 1 minute meditation. That's where you're going to get immediate effects. You're going to feel the changes in your endorphins, those feel good chemicals. You're going to be able to focus better for whatever activity you're doing. So if I'm about to write or write an article or do a project, I'll do a 1 minute meditation to get myself into that zone. So those have been critical for me. That was something I really wanted to incorporate into meditation for the real world because they work and they give you immediate results. And I think that's what gets people coming back for more.
Nice. Do you have any like specific cues that you use to kind of bring you into that and say, oh, I'm going to take this time? I know you mentioned sort of like taking phone or making phone calls or doing interviews or things of that nature, but are there anything else
Yes.
that you use to facilitate that?
That's such a great question because that's how we build a habit is we find a cue and we put our meditation with that, right? I was already doing my red light therapy, so I'm going to use it for my meditation time.
Mhm.
Whatever your cue is, I make my tea in the morning. I'm going to meditate right before I have my first sip of tea. So I like to have a 1 moment meditation right before I eat. And I do this with my partner. It's more formal,
Mm.
like kind of like a prayer, which has been throughout ages. People do this before eating, taking a moment of gratitude and reverence for the moment and the food. So we take a deep breath, get nice and present, and then we say something we're grateful for, something specific. That's what the gratitude research shows is that if you could be specific and I feel the gratitude, I smell the food, then we eat. And I'm able to eat a little slower, eat a little mindful when I do it that way. Another one that I integrate into my life is every single time I wash my hands. It could be this mindless activity, or especially when I'm in a public restroom, I feel like I need that like reset when there's like chaos all around you at an airport or somewhere busy. Instead of like singing happy birthday to myself two times, like they say to do, which feels kind of crazy, instead, that's 20 seconds. So we want to wash our hands 20 seconds. I do a 4 count inhale and a 6 count exhale twice. When you do that, you are able to like really get into the state of presence, but you're also by elongating your exhales, you're slowing your heart rate, slowing your heart um, beat, and lowering the heart pressure. So it's really beneficial. Just 2 breaths. That's all it takes.
Right.
And right before bed, if I wake up in the middle of the night, all these cues that I'm like, when I feel anxious, that's what I'll do it. It doesn't have to be a whole minute. It could be just a couple breaths.
Right. Yeah. The extending the exhale from what I've learned is it actually activates the parasympathetic nervous system. So it definitely works to calm the body down some. One that I like to use, and this is one that I've used for years now, is stoplights. Every time I'm at a
Hmm.
stoplight, just using that as a cue. I wore a ring for a while. I'm not wearing it right now because I was working on a car earlier. But I'm wearing a ring, and just every time I noticed it, touching it, and just
Oh,
asking
that's
myself, what am I
beautiful.
thinking? What am I feeling? So for all those ring wearers out there, you can use that as a cue as well. But yeah, I love that. I love just the idea of finding things throughout our day, little bells of mindfulness, so to speak, to
Yes.
bring us back to presence and bring us back to the present moment. Because in the world today, and especially with, again, the way that we are taught by our parents, we're very, very self conscious and very self absorbed, and all of these secondary emotions, all the shame, the guilt, the self-consciousness, the imposter syndrome, the social anxiety, the perfectionism. Those are all just byproducts of this idea of the fixed self. And once we are able to penetrate that illusion, that kind of goes away a little bit. At least so I've noticed over the past few weeks.
And
It's a
that's
very
what
new
they
thing.
say,
It's a
right?
very new thing for me. And I'm not claiming to be like enlightened or anything like that, but there has been a shift, and I can definitely say that with some confidence. So, which is pretty awesome, right? Is that that's what we're going for. But
Yeah.
so yeah. So do you just meditate in the mornings and then your little daily cues, or do you have an evening practice as well, or?
Well, I have I've not shared this at all before. I've had a problem with sticking with my flossing. And it's really important not only for the health of your teeth and gums, but we find that it affects your heart health
Hmm.
and the bacteria. If you don't floss, the bacteria goes into your bloodstream and could cause inflammation. So I was reading all about how important flossing is, and I didn't tell anybody, but for my New Year's resolution to myself, I was like, I'm gonna floss every day, which seemed like I'm gonna fail at this. This isn't gonna happen. But I make the flossing like mindful flossing. I sit tall. My partner and I actually usually do it together. So it's like this moment where we're doing it together. And I feel it like a massage. I'm also a massage therapist. So I'm interested in like feeling, oh, the massage in between my gums, notice my posture. And my flossing is now my meditation in the evening. And I am proud to say it is February 22nd as we record this. I have not missed a single day of flossing in 2024 because I'm considering it part of that evening meditation and winding down routine.
That's awesome. Do you
Yeah.
do you sit retreat at all?
I've gone to some retreats. Actually, I briefly mentioned my very first retreat in the Forward to Meditation for the Real World because I escaped it in the middle of the night. Which apparently is a really common thing, but I arrived for extra credit for my Buddhism class with my friend to this retreat center in West Virginia. And when we arrived, we did not know it was a silent retreat. So we had like our textbooks, our books,
And they're like, no.
journals to write. They're like, no, no, you can't even write anything. So I not only escaped it in the middle of the night, but I also cheated. So I enjoyed the retreat so much. I thought the speakers were amazing, the meditations were amazing. I was focused in the meditations. And then when we had like the times to ourselves, I would totally sneak off and I wrote a grant proposal to make a documentary film in Peru. It just came to me. Inspiration came to me on that retreat. And I knew I was cheating, but it was in my head. I had to get it out. So I wrote this grant proposal. I went on to make the documentary in Peru and become a National Geographic finalist for this
Oh
documentary.
wow.
So it was absolute inspiration. In the meantime, my friend, she was struggling during each and every meditation. She was picking at her toes. She was like not into it at all. And at some point, she goes, we got to get out of here. And by that point, I was relaxed. It'd been a couple of days. I had just written this proposal. I was like, sure, let's do it. And so we escaped, which people do all the time now, I find out, but we felt really like rebels. But it was interesting, our different experiences with it. I mean, we both cheated in a way, but mine was like the inspiration that it led to. And I think that was one of those sparks that made me be like, oh, wow, this meditation thing, it works.
Yeah. Yeah, it absolutely does. And it's been my experience. It takes a couple days to even really get settled, right? Just to get into that space and really become present and kind of calm the nervous system down enough from living out in the regular world. Once you're on
Yeah.
retreat, it's like it's a bit of a culture shock and a bit of a shock to the system to just have like nothing going on, right? And
Yeah.
even though we're sitting and the mind is still active, it's we don't have the phone calls to make. We don't have the partner to talk to, or we don't have the dinner to cook because that's all done for us. Everything's done
Yeah.
for us pretty much. And it's really just it, for lack of a better way to put it, it forces you to just be with yourself. And
Hmm.
in a world of so many distractions, people in my experience do not like being with themselves very much. It was a French philosopher, Blaise Pascal, said that all of humankind's problems stem from man's inability to sit in a room quietly by himself. So yeah,
Yes.
I could see that. For sure.
And we're all just distracting ourselves, scrolling through social media, doing things that are making it so that we are avoiding being with ourselves. And so I say, rather than scrolling while you wait, meditate while you wait. You're in and sitting in the waiting room at the doctor's office. This is a great opportunity to meditate, to get yourself in the right state of mind and body to go into that doctor's appointment. Perhaps it's challenging like mine, and you really need that moment to reset.
Right. That's awesome. Well, so this has been an amazing conversation, and it sounds like you are really dedicated to your practice. And I'd love to check out your books. Where can people find those at?
So Meditation for the Real World, you can go to meditationfortherealworld.com, and all the links to buy it, all the bookstores are there. And once you buy it, let me know on that website, meditationfortherealworld.com, because I'll give you the audios that have the music that is engineered to optimize your brain waves embedded in them, and the opportunity to get the meditation music album that I'm so excited just came out yesterday.
Yeah, that is really exciting. And so where can people find you at?
I mean, the best way is to go to my
Just go to the
website,
website.
meditationfortherealworld.com. I have an Instagram at scienceof.yoga. You can tag any pictures of the book in the real world, and connect with me there too at scienceof.yoga.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation. I really appreciate it. And I hope you continue your practice and continue writing books and making National Geographic documentaries and doing all the things.
One day. Yes, it'll all come together, I trust.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thank you so much.
Thank you.